Forget everything you thought you knew about the 90s. You've been lied to. The truth is far more terrifying and insane. Today, we're opening the secret archives to show you how ordinary guys, yesterday's drivers and athletes, became the shadow kings of entire cities. They wrote the laws with blood on the asphalt, and even the generals feared them. Ready to find out who was really pulling the strings and how their brutal empire fell? Then buckle up. This is going to be a wild ride. The early 90s. A great country had collapsed, leaving nothing but chaos in its wake. Factories shut down, the army was in disarray, and the police were lost. In this power vacuum, like predators drawn to the scent of blood, the new masters of life emerged onto the streets. And today our story is about the most audacious and bloody gang in the city of Ryazan, the legendary Slonovskaya OPG, the Elephant Gang. Their story is a hymn to brutality, ambition, and the dizzying fall from the very top. It all started with two seemingly ordinary men, Nikolai Maximov, known as Max, a cunning and enterprising taxi driver, and Vyacheslav Ermolov, known as Slon, the Elephant, the son of a high-ranking police officer, a charismatic and incredibly ruthless leader. They saw opportunity in the chaos. They understood the old laws were dead. It was time to write their own. Their first business was painfully simple but effective. They started with street hustlers, offering krisha, protection. Those who refused faced inevitable punishment. Broken ribs and burned-out cars quickly convinced everyone else that messing with the elephants was a bad idea. Money began to flow like a river, and their appetites grew. The core of the gang was formed by young, daring guys, former athletes and veterans of the war in Afghanistan, men who feared neither pain nor blood. The Elephants had iron discipline, a complete ban on alcohol, regular physical training, and total obedience to the leaders. Betrayal was punished in only one way: a slow, agonizing death. This wasn't just a gang, it was an army, ready to die for its commanders. But Ryazan wasn't empty. Another powerful group, the Arapatovskaya gang, led by Viktor Arapetov, already ran the city. A clash was inevitable. This wasn't a war for money. This was a battle for the right to be called the master of the city. And the Elephants decided to strike first, showing the entire criminal underworld their animalistic fury. The first blood was shed for show. The Elephants' hitman tracked down one of the rival leaders and gunned him down in the middle of the city, in broad daylight. It was a challenge, a declaration of war. The city held its breath. The air grew thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. A real war had begun on the streets of Ryazan. The Arapatovskaya gang fought back. Car bombs, shootouts, kidnappings. Ryazan turned into 1930s Chicago. But Slon and Max were one step ahead. They acted with more cunning and ruthlessness. They didn't just kill their competitors, they humiliated them, broke them psychologically, making the entire city see who held the real power. A legendary story still told in Ryazan. The Elephants learned their rivals were gathering at a nightclub. Instead of a simple shootout, they stormed the place with automatic rifles, forced everyone to the floor, and made the crime bosses sing children's songs. Those who refused were beaten in front of everyone. It was an attack on the most important thing they had, their authority. The climax of the war was the day the Elephants decided to finish their enemy once and for all. March 31st, 1993. The gang's hitmen set up an ambush. When the car carrying Viktor Arapetov and his entourage approached a building, it was met with a storm of automatic fire. 8 people were killed on the spot. This wasn't just a victory, it was an execution. The Arapatovskaya gang was decapitated and destroyed. After this massacre, the Elephants became the absolute masters of Ryazan. Everything was now under their control. Markets, factories, restaurants, banks. No businessman could operate without their permission. They taxed the entire city. Their office in downtown Ryazan became the shadow government. People went there to solve problems, not to the mayor's office or the police. The gang established its own OPG, a communal treasury where millions flowed. This money wasn't just for weapons and the leaders' lavish lifestyles. The elephants began to legalize their business. They invested in real estate, opened legitimate companies, and bought shares in major enterprises. Yesterday's gangsters were turning into respectable businessmen, but their methods remain the same.
The leaders of the elephants bathed in luxury. Expensive foreign cars, gold chains as thick as a finger, villas, and endless parties. They felt like gods who could do anything. They could block a central street just to race their cars. They could walk into any restaurant and throw out all the customers. They were the law. They were the power. One of the most horrifying stories that shows their lawlessness was the kidnapping of a businessman who refused to pay them. They took him to a forest, forced him to dig his own grave, and then buried him alive, leaving a small tube for him to breathe through. A few hours later, they dug him up and asked, "So, have you changed your mind?" Of course, after that, he was ready to give them everything. But their ambitions grew, and the elephants decided that controlling business wasn't enough. They wanted official power. They began promoting their own people into politics, financing election campaigns, and placing their puppets in the seats of deputies and officials. The mafia and the state were merging into one. The city had finally become their personal kingdom. It seemed their empire would last forever. They became so influential that even law enforcement from Moscow was afraid to confront them. But, as in any great tragedy, greatness comes before the fall, and the cause of their collapse was their own cruelty and overconfidence. They made one mistake that cost them everything. In 1994, the elephants murdered the director of the Ryazan meatpacking plant. It was a high-profile, demonstrative killing. But they overlooked one thing. The victim had serious connections in Moscow. This time, the case couldn't be swept under the rug. A special investigation team was sent from the capital with a single order: destroy the elephants. A real hunt began. The federal agents worked methodically and brutally. One by one, they started arresting gang members. And then, the main law of the criminal world came into play. When things got hot, it was every man for himself. Yesterday's brothers, who had sworn loyalty until death, began to testify against each other. Sloan and Max were placed on the federal wanted list. They fled, tried to hide, but the net was closing in. Max was one of the first to be arrested, but Sloan, Vyacheslav Ermolov, managed to hide for a long time. Rumors spread that he had escaped to Europe and was living under a new name, but justice, though slow, eventually caught up with him too. The trial of the Slonovskaya OPG became one of the most sensational cases in the history of modern Russia. Dozens of men sat in the dock. Dozens of episodes of murder, kidnapping, and extortion were revealed. The city was horrified to learn under whose power it had been living for all those years. The sentences were severe: life imprisonment and decades in maximum security prisons. The leaders who were once the kings of the city ended their days in prison cells. Their empire, built on blood and fear, crumbled to dust. The story of the elephants is a stark example that anyone who places themselves above the law and human life will sooner or later pay a terrible price. The street elevates you to the top quickly, but it throws you down even faster. This was an era when strength decided everything, an era that gave birth to both monsters and heroes. But it's important to remember one thing: even in the darkest of times, there is always a choice, and those who chose the path of violence ended up on the scrap heap of history. Today, their names are just a reminder of how fragile human life is and how short the path from king to prisoner can be. So, that's it. The hidden truth of the 90s. Brutal, bloody, and educational. If this story made your heart pound, if you felt the energy of those insane years, then support the channel. Smash that like button, subscribe, and write in the comments which other legendary gang you want to learn about. And here's the hook. If we get 1,000 likes, I'll tell you about the Kazan phenomenon, A war of teenage gangs so brutal, it made the entire Soviet Union shudder. See you next time.